Hi guys, this is Chris from The Masked Marble. In 2026, I have an upcoming gig where a client wants me to put together a large Lego layout with trains. Large Lego layout, that's alliteration. And I not only want to automate the train so that it stops at train stations, I also want to automate the switches that it goes through so I can control its path. I thought you'd like to see a little behind the scenes of how we're going to program its route. So let me show you. Okay, so here's the route that the train's going to go. It's going to go counterclockwise through loop 1, up through loop 2 clockwise, then into this center loop in the clockwise direction, through a double crossover, then out the other double crossover into loop 3, down into loop 4, and back into the center loop through the double crossover, and then continue on to loop 1. At each of these train stations, marked by the boxes, we want the train to stop automatically, also there. And we also want these double crossovers, those switches, to be automatically switched. So here's a close-up of the center loop. Again, the train goes out loop 1, stops, returns, loop 2, stops, returns, up through the double crossover. We want it to stop here at A, then we want it to go around the second time to go out to loop 3 and then stop at that train station, go down into loop 4, stop at that train station, come back in. We don't want it to stop right here because the train's not in the center loop, so we want it to go all the way into the center loop and then stop in front of that station and then come back out. So we're going to label the two crossovers A and B, and these loops are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now the way that we're going to have the train stop at each of these train stations is simply put a color tile on the track and then have a color sensor on the train so that it stops at each of these. But how to get the switches switched correctly, that's a little bit more in depth. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to put colored tiles here in A and here in crossover B. So what's going to happen is the train's going to come in. It will not cross the color tile yet. When it gets up here, it will hit that color tile and stop. At that point, we're going to set B to straight so that the train will come back around and won't exit, but will go straight through, keeping on the center loop. When it hits B, we want A to switch to crossover so that it will exit into loops 3 and 4. Then it'll come in from 4, it'll still be in the crossover mode. The train will not hit the tile, and when it comes around, double crossover B will still be set to straight, and when the train senses that tile, it will set A to straight. So it'll come back up, the train will sense that tile and stop, and then when it stops, it will also set crossover B to cross back over so that when the train starts up again, it will exit. How do we do that programmatically? So here's the logic flow of how we want to accomplish this. The train will be exiting the center loop and going down into loop 1. So once it hits stop 1, it will stop. Then it's going to go on up through into loop 2, and then when it hits stop 2, it will stop at stop 2. So it's going to go through B in the crossing configuration, then it's going to come up to A in the straight configuration because we want the train to park in front of the train stop. When it hits that A, we want it to take an action. So these dots are where we want actions to happen. So when it hits stop 1, we want the train to stop. We want the train to stop. We don't want the train to do anything when it just goes through the B crossing. So there's no action there, but there is an action here. What do we want it to do? Well, we want the train to stop, and we also want to switch B to the crossover. So we want the train to stop here. This is the action, stop here. We want the train to stop, and then we want to set B to straight. So then the train's gonna come around. It senses that tile, we want to set A to cross. So that's the action we take here. We want to set A to cross. We don't want the train to stop down here at B, we only want it to stop here at the station. Then the train's going to come up through A and cross, no action taken. So that's why we put the tile here. We don't want the train to take any action while it's crossing, only when it's going straight. It's going to cross, it's going to go into loop 3, and then in loop 3, it's going to hit a stop there, and the action we want it to take at that train station is stop. down through loop 4. There's a train station there, and we want it to stop. That's the action. Then it's going to come back in through A. It's just going to cross over. A is already in the crossing configuration, so we don't have to take any action. And then when it gets down to B, B is also already in the straight configuration. We want it to take an action there though. We want A to be set to straight because A is currently in the crossing configuration. So the action, set A to straight, then it's going to go up to A, and when it gets up here we want it to stop again. So that's the action there, stop. And we also want to set B to cross so that the train can exit the center loop and then go back to loop 1. So how do we map all of this into code? Well, a good way to do this is what's called a state diagram. In a state diagram, we have different states in which the program is. So we'll set two states, a motor's on state and a motor's off state. When we're in the motor's on state, a trigger will trigger an action. It goes over a stop tile that sends a stop signal, and then the action, which is denoted by the asterisk, will be the train will decelerate to a stop, and then we will programmatically move it into the motor's off state. When the stop signal starts, we're going to set, maybe a 10-second timer so the train will pause there for 10 seconds. Once that timer expires, if you're in the motor's off position, then you will accelerate to speed. If you're already in the motor's on state and you get the stop timer expiring, you don't need to do anything because the motors are already on. That's why we have two states. This is the simple diagram, but how about the train switches? It's a little more complicated, but again, it's only two states. So here's the way that the train switches state diagram works. We're going to have two states. We're either going to be in loops 1 and 2, which would mean we're getting ready to enter loops 1 and 2, or we are in loops 1 and 2, or we're going to be in loops 3 and 4, which means we're getting ready to enter loops 3 and 4, or we're in loops 3 and 4. We're going to have three different triggers, A, B, and C. Trigger A means this tile here. It will be its own color. This will be B, so trigger B will be sensing that tile, and then trigger C will be the stops that are in the 4 loops. We'll make them red. Let's say those will be red tiles. We'll say this is B for blue, and then maybe we'll have, maybe a yellow tile here. So we have triggers A, B, and C. That's 3 different color tiles that the train is going to sense. So let's say we are in loops 1 and 2, and we sense a C tile, the red tile, at one of the train stations. Then we're going to take the action of sending the stop signal, and then we're going to return to the in loops 1 and 2 state. We're going to stay in that state. And the reason is because you're going to sense a red tile at the train station in loop 1, and you're going to sense another one in loop 2. So you're going to do this multiple times, but you're still in loops 1 and 2. So you've been in those 2 loops, then you're coming into the center loop. You don't pass a tile here, so the first tile you sense is going to be A when you're coming from loops 1 and 2. Then you will send a stop signal, so the train will stop here at the station. Then you will set the B switch to straight. Then you're going to go back to loops 1 and 2. Once that signal timer is complete, the train's going to start moving again. And what's the next thing that's going to happen? It's going to sense the B tile. What happens when it senses the B tile? That's when it actually leaves the state in loops 1 and 2, and it's going to go down to the next state of in loops 3 and 4. So it's going to sense the B. It's going to take the action to set A to cross so that it can exit into loops 3 and 4. So it's going to take that action, and then it's in a different state. It's in loops 3 and 4. When it's in those loops, if it senses a red tile, C, it's going to stop, send the stop signal, and then it's going to stay in loops 3 and 4. If the train is in the loops 3 and 4 state and it re-enters the center loop, it will not cross that tile A. The first signal will be when it senses the tile at switch B. So as the train is moving, it senses that, it sets the A to straight, and then it stays in loops 3 and 4 state. It's going to go up and hit A. What happens when it's in the loops 3 and 4 state and senses A? It sends the stop signal. So the train has come all the way around. Now it's in front of the station and it stops. Then it sets B to cross so that when it leaves the station, the train can exit and go back to loop 1. When we send the stop signal, remember the other state diagram. we decelerated to stop, and the motors went off. But we also had to, you know what I should have done? Is we actually should have taken another action here to start the timer. Yes, I forgot that. So we take two actions. When the motors are on, we get a stop signal, we decelerate, and we start the timer. The motors are off until this timer expires and then accelerates to speed. And when the train resumes, it's in the loops 1 and 2 state. So there's two states that help us keep track of what to do when we sense A or B, because it's different. When we're in loops 1 and 2, if we sense A, we stop and we set B to straight. In loops 3 and 4, when we sense A, we stop and we set B to cross. And that's the difference, is whether we set B to straight or B to cross. We can't just rely on sensing A and set it to straight every time or set B to cross every time. So we have to have these two different states to tell us, well, when you're in this state and you sense A, you're going to set B to straight. When you're in this state and you sense A, you're going to set B to cross. The same thing with B. When you're in this state and you sense B, you're going to set A to cross. When you're in this state and you sense B, you're going to set A to straight. And the reason we do that is so that the train can come in and stop in front of the station. When the train's in front of the station, we can't set the A to cross because the train would derail. We have to let the train leave the station, and then when it senses the B tile, that's when we can set the A to cross so the train can exit. And the same thing when the train comes back in. We don't want the train to immediately come in and then stop because it's not in front of the station. So we want the train to take a full loop so that it can pull up and be in front of the station before it stops, and then go back around and exit. And that's why we do different things with the switches depending on which state we're in. Now that I have this state diagram done, I know how to program my code to make the train and the switches do what I want. This is a good way to do your coding if you are a computer programmer, is you figure out the logic first. It really makes things crystal clear of what you need to do in the code. So this is my roadmap going forward for how to automate this train in Pybricks. Wish me luck. Thanks for joining me on my engineering adventure. If you want to see where this project is going, make sure you're subscribed.